they don't want to accept the truth and Him who is the truth, namely Jesus Christ, all of their thinking gets perverted upside down, and that's why we're seeing all this this abundance of just perverse ideology coming out in the world. All the gender confusion, everywhere in society, there's a rebellion against the truth, really, and that's because man refuses to, when man refuses to accept God as the source of truth, then when he looks to try to find truth apart from God, he's going to either end up following deception or some other perverse knowledge. So for a soul to be without knowledge and understanding, to not follow the proper knowledge and understanding, the true knowledge that comes from God, it's not going to end well. And the second part of verse 2, he that hasteth with his feet sinneth. This is talking about somebody who acts without thinking. He's so quick to do something, he doesn't think about really what he's doing, so he's quick to act. He acts rashly and ends up usually bungling things and making a mess of things rather than carefully thinking it out and then acting with purpose. We already looked at verse 3 in connection with verse 1 because of the connection there between the fool at the end of verse 1 and the foolishness in 3. Number 4 says, wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. Well, the sad thing is that wealth makes friends, but are they really true friends? What happens when the wealth disappears? Do the friends stay? So this is kind of speaking in that way that wealth will gain you all kinds of people who want to be your friends, and because they really like you for your money. But then, as the second part of the verse, the poor is separated from his neighbor. Even the poor person, even his neighbor doesn't want to help him or associate with him. But true friends aren't. True friends aren't your friends only because of what you have. They'll be your friends because of who you are. As I don't have it was not too long ago, the one that
friend is closer than a brother.
Yeah, was that just in 18? And then there's also a man that has friends must show himself friendly. So to be a really good friend, you have to be the kind of person that people want to be friends with. It's not about shouldn't be about your money. It should be about your character, which is what we're really talking about here anyway. Starting at verse 1, better is the poor that walketh in his integrity. So your character.
It's verse 24 of 18. It is the.
Okay, it is. I thought it wasn't too far. Oh, yeah, right at the very end. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly. So really, in a sense, this chapter 19 is, some of the verses are building on that concept too. That was there at the end of chapter 18. Yeah, a man that has friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. A true neighbor is going to help you regardless of if he's the kind of person who is a true friend and helping you out of love, not just because he's wanting something in return. A true neighbor will help you with whether you're poor or rich, and a true friend. And I'm talking about the neighbor in terms of how Christ defined a neighbor. Who is my neighbor in the parable of the Good Samaritan? Who was the neighbor? It wasn't the priest and the Levite that went, ooh, I'm not going to help that guy there. Went by on the other side. It was the Samaritan who was supposed to be, they generally didn't associate with the Jewish people, and yet in this case, he was the one who helped. So anyone the one who loves and helps is the true neighbor. Let's see, there's another one coming up that's kind of related to, there's going to be more on wealth, but verse 6 is sort of tied to this idea of wealth maketh many friends, because verse 6 here in chapter 19 says, many will entreat the favor of the prince. Everybody wants to be on the good side with who's in charge, with the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. Are you really a friend because you're a true friend, or are you just a friend because of what you get, the gifts that you get? There was another one that was I can't remember. There's probably more that coincide with this verse coming up too, but as I mentioned earlier, verse 5 and verse 9 are very similar. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall not escape. Verse 9 is, the first part is identical. A false witness shall not be unpunished, and he that speaketh lies shall perish. You might get away with lies and bearing false witness. These are dealing with sins against the 8th commandment. Bearing false witness and speaking lies, these are the things that are forbidden by the 8th commandment. And you might get away with it for a while. Maybe you'll even get away with it for your whole life on earth, but God knows the hearts, and you will not escape his judgment. But usually even here in this earth, a liar, somebody who bears false witness, eventually, sooner or later, it even catches up with him. The saying is probably partly where the saying, what goes around comes around. Somebody who bears false witness often is one who ends up getting lied about and having false witness borne about him. Not always. Sometimes people tell the truth about him, and that's what uncovers his false witness. But the important thing is that sooner or later, or as another verse says, and I think it's in Numbers 23, or be sure your sin will find you out. This is I just looked it up this morning. I think it was, if I remember right, it was Numbers 23. Apparently, it doesn't look like the right one, but anyway, here it is. 32. I'm dyslexic today, but it was 32, not 23. Numbers 32, verse 23. So I knew there was a 23 in there somewhere. Numbers 32, 23. If you will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Eventually, your sins will catch up with you.
That can go very well at the end of every commandment.
Yeah. We think we can fool, and we often do succeed in fooling other people, but we can't fool God. So even if we escape punishment for a while, eventually our sin will catch up with us, and we will experience God's vengeance, and that was implied in the, it probably would have been a good verse to bring into the sermon today too, is the wording that was used in our parable in Luke 18 about the talks about God will avenge, shall not God avenge his own elect, which cry day and night unto him. I tell you, he will avenge them speedily. So this reminds us of the verse too, that God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. It's not always our place to, it's not our place to take revenge, to avenge ourselves. Certainly we can do what we can to strive for justice if we've been wronged. We certainly can try to get justice, but there are times when we're wronged and it doesn't seem like there's any avenue, and it's becoming more and more so. There's no recourse to help you get justice. The only hope we have sometimes is that eventually God will hold those people accountable for what they've done. We don't have to take matters into our own hands. Some things we just have to suffer these things, endure these things, and do what we can to do what's right. But
our neighbors, the Coates, they had their torch and tank stolen the other day, and it was like broad daylight. This guy just came and took them, and Tony didn't know right away what was missing, and finally he figured out what was missing because he knew something, but you know how you just.
Did he have an idea who did it then too, or?
Well, they have cameras.
Okay.
So anyway, so they posted it on Facebook, and it just like the guy couldn't handle it, and
They
a couple
posted
days.
on a lot of different.
They got posted all over the internet and whatnot, and of course they filed a police report. Well, at some point in the night, he dropped it off a couple days ago.
Oh, really?
And with a big old note that says, "Sorry, I don't do this all the time. I was having a really bad morning."
What I do on a bad day.
I just stole your torch because I was having a bad day. No,
Yeah. So his conscience and faith.
I mean, it made me feel better that we don't have somebody just going around taking everything, but like,
Yeah.
I was going, man.
Yeah.
In a different vein, I knew somebody who replaced their refrigerator with a bigger square footage, and it was fine, there was nothing wrong with it. They put it on the curb and said free, works good, and people drove by it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they put $50 on it and it was gone the next
Same thing
morning.
happened to our couch, the old brown couch from my parents'
yeah.
house. We put like $50 on it, or no, we put free on it, and it sat there for 2-3 weeks after my parents moved out. And then I think one of the guys put like $150 on it, just as a joke, and then the next day it was gone.
It has to be,
So funny.
you have to think it's valuable when it's stealing.
It's so ridiculous.
Alright. We'll stop there today. Could probably think of biblical examples too, where false witnesses were, well, even in the trial of Christ, it's interesting. That the Pharisees were, and the scribes and Pharisees and the chief priests, I think the way it's worded, when they had Jesus on trial, if I can find it, but it says they sought false witness. So the chief priests and scribes were so corrupt they were looking for false witnesses to use against Jesus, and so it's sad. I mean, there are cultures, things can get so bad that when you go to court expecting to have justice, but if people are so corrupt that they're actually trying to find false witnesses to prove the opposite of what they should be proving, must be in it's in Matthew. Let me look. I'm pretty sure the wording says that they sought false witness that they might accuse him. Jesus. Yeah, Matthew 26:59. Now the chief priests and elders and all the council sought false witness against Jesus to put him to death.
And Pilate could see right through it, because he said, I wash my hands in the.
Yeah, I find no fault in this man, so he said,
Did he say just man? This just?
That was Pilate's wife. Have thou nothing to do with this just man.
Okay.
So there are repeated testimonies that showed the innocence of Christ from many unlikely sources too. That was 26:59. So we may find ourselves in that, the way things are going, we may find ourselves in a situation like that, where you've done the right thing, like Jesus. He was the sinless Son of God, and yet in a court of law he was found guilty by using these false witnesses, and even these two didn't agree together, so they couldn't even find two witnesses that totally agreed. But they were so intent on finding false witnesses. Well, that'll have to do, but.
In the Old West, that happened a lot. That's why the judges would be corrupt and people would pay them off, so that's why the cowboys would tend to take matters into their own hands.
Oh yeah, the
because they couldn't
vigilante
get justice
justice
through the courts.
Yeah.
Because even if they'd have them properly arrested, they just released them.
Yeah, and that's, think of how that's.
And the punishment was meted out immediately, so there wasn't a time for the,
Often, yeah.
The gallows were right there.
Right. Yep. Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, and sometimes that's brought out in different ways in the in some of the old westerns or series, Bonanza, Big Valley, I think. Yeah, there's some where they're corrupt judges and things that, and some of those are probably based on things that, or similar things that happened, where sometimes the judge had a particular, we were watching one the other day where he so much wanted the guy to make an example out of the guy, and that's sometimes what happens. We have to make an example out of this person, so we have to make the evidence fit our preconceived sentence already. So. Or what happens more and more now in these trials by media, going back to Rodney King,
It doesn't matter if you're not guilty, because
Trump.
George
even
Floyd.
if you're let go, the whole world still thinks you are.
Yeah, they so besmirch your name that even if some see through it, others don't, and your name is sullied. All right. So we ended with verse 6, I think. Oh, verse 5. All right, let's end with the benediction. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God